It is impossible by its very nature to give you the precise number, but it is thought around 130 hostages are still detained after they were kidnapped on October the 7th. Is it right for Israel to effectively say, we're not coming to Cairo, we will not engage unless you give us the precise names and locations and how they are, the well-being or otherwise, of all the people? Now, this has put hopes, as I say, in the balance. Officials for Hamas have arrived in Egypt, saying a 6-week cessation in fighting could be signed off in 24 to 48 hours. Now, let's look at events of the weekend. The US began airdropping aid directly into Gaza. 3 military planes parachuting in more than 30,000 meals of Palestinians who are sheltering in Rafah in the south of the Gaza Strip. On Friday, US President Joe Biden announced this would start happening, but managed to twice confuse Gaza with Ukraine when he spoke to confirm the plan would be going ahead.
In the coming days, we're going to join with our friends in Jordan and others in providing airdrops of additional food and supplies into Ukraine and seek to continue to open up other avenues into Ukraine, including the possibility of a marine corridor to deliver large amounts of humanitarian assistance. In addition to expanding deliveries by land, as I said, we're going to insist that Israel facilitate more trucks and more routes to get more and more people the help they need. No excuses, because the truth is, aid flowing to Gaza is nowhere nearly enough.
Does the penny not drop when he suddenly sees Israel later in the script that he's talked about humanitarian convoys to Ukraine initially? That would be a hell of a convoy, wouldn't it? Now, it's reported that President Biden, who last week told reporters he was hopeful of a ceasefire by today, subsequently told his negotiators over the weekend to get me a deal to pause the fighting in Gaza. No deal has yet been arranged. But Biden's Vice President, Kamala Harris, effectively called for an immediate ceasefire when she spoke at an event in Alabama last night.
Given the immense scale of suffering in Gaza, there must be an immediate ceasefire. For at least the next 6 weeks, which is what is currently on the table. This will get the hostages out and get a significant amount of aid in. This would allow us to build something more enduring, to ensure Israel is secure, and to respect the right of the Palestinian people to dignity, freedom, and self-determination.
Now, last night, Yasmin El-Gamal, a former Middle East policy advisor in the US Department of Defense in the Obama administration, spoke with my LBC colleague Nick Abbott. She explained that Kamala Harris's intervention represented a significant change in rhetoric from the US government.
It was probably the most forceful language that the Biden administration has used so far when it comes to saying that Israel needs to allow more humanitarian assistance in. She actually called the situation in Gaza inhumane. It's really the strongest and most empathetic language and tone that we've seen from a Biden administration official, which just shows you how dire the situation is.
And she went on to explain what the likely framework of a ceasefire agreement might look like if a deal can eventually be reached.
The latest iteration that I saw was a 40-day pause, 40 hostages released, and 400 Palestinians released for those. Those are the kinds of formulas that we're talking about here, that they're trying to come to an agreement to.
Well, let's explore some of those points with Nomi Bar-Yaacov, who's Associate Fellow in International Security at Chatham House and is an expert in international negotiations. And if I can put it straight to you, what do you think the framework of a deal could look like? Good morning.
Good morning, first and foremost. I think, this is correct. We're talking about 40 days, 40 prisoners for 400 Palestinian prisoners and vast quantities of aid going in. I think that's the sort of basic contour. But the issue is the 40 are the women, children under the age of 19, as stipulated in the agreement, elderly and wounded. And those are all civilians. There are no men in fighting age. Then the big question is what's going to happen with those. As you stated, Israel has asked for a list of the hostages to be released. Also, in the first ceasefire deal, that was the problem. The every day Hamas gave the list at the 11th hour, sort of just 1 minute before the deadline, and the very last day when Israel resumed fighting, Hamas's list did not tally with what was agreed. So clarity on who is going to be released is very important to the Israelis.
It's very important. Can I ask you, is it fair? Do you think it's right that Israel is reportedly saying, until we have a greater level of detail, we will not proceed?
I don't think it's a question of fairness or not. I think one needs to reach an agreement whereby the fighting will stop. The priority has to be a ceasefire. The Palestinians in Gaza are starving, as Kamala Harris has noted. As we know that that's the fact. Not enough aid has gotten in, and there's malnourishment, there's disease, and there's actual starvation in places. So the issue is to just reach a deal as soon as possible, and in order for, and each side is sort of flexing their muscle. If Hamas were to release the list of known to be 134 remaining hostages in Gaza, they are, out of those 134, 34 are known to be dead. It is not known beyond that who is alive and who is dead.
Sorry, just to clarify, I do apologise.
Yes.
So we believe there are 100 still alive and 34 have perished. Is that right? Just to nail that.
No, we believe that 34 have perished of the 134, and it is not known how many more.
Oh, I see. So we
died.
still don't know whether there's 100, or we don't know how many of that remaining 100 might still be alive.
No one knows.
I see.
Except for Hamas. No one knows except for Hamas.
I see.
Who is alive beyond that. I mean,
Okay.
so that's the problem, and that's where that's the contentious. That's the contentious
Yeah.
bone at the moment.
I've
As
got
you can
it.
imagine, there've been hitches along the way,
No, I've got
and
it. Yeah. So
the
let-
more
let-
details.
let-
I've just given you the raw skeleton
Yeah.
of the essence of this.
So let me ask you this then. When it comes to Hamas, if you'll allow that this is a change in stance from Hamas, a potential, why? How do we interpret this move by Hamas in your view?
Hamas are flexing their muscle because of the dreadful event that happened a couple of days ago with the death of around 116
This was the
Palestinian
so-called
civilians.
stampede. Yeah.
Yes, I was. Yes, there was a stampede, and there was also fire from the Israeli IDF, and it was an absolute disaster. And of course, it wouldn't have happened had aid gone through to the Strip, or had Israel not gone in with a land invasion. So there is the Hamas are feeling that they have the upper hand now. They're feeling stronger in the negotiations as a result of that. They're feeling that they don't need to necessarily be as flexible as they were. Qatar is putting tremendous pressure on them. The Americans are putting tremendous pressure on the Israelis. And very importantly, President Biden has invited Netanyahu's main contender, the leader in the polls, had elections been held today. He would be Prime Minister Benny Gantz. He's flying today to Washington.